like to share with you my pilgrimage, my story in relation to money. And I'd like to begin with the question, what's the Christian approach to money? Something I thought about it through my life. So what is the Christian approach? In my youth, I thought, what mattered was how we obtained wealth. I think that's a pretty common answer to that question, that what's the Christian approach is, get your money in appropriate legal ways, and then it's acceptable to have money. And many Christians would add to that also a sense of, we need to tithe. And people would see that, with this view, money is a blessing. It's a good thing. And so as long as you get it legally, that's great. And some would even view tithing as, a way of maybe getting more money, that there's a promise, if I tithe, more blessings will come. And that was the camp that I was in for the early years of my life. At least that sense of, hey, if you get it legally, it's okay. Tithing is important. And at that point, since I saw no inherent problem with money, I figured that I would like more of it than my parents had. So I headed off to college with this thought in mind: how could I make a bit more money? I wanted to have more than my parents had. So I started college as an economics major with the intention, the thought of going to law school. That seemed like something that, with my interests, where I could make the most money. Now, of course, I would tell myself, I want to make a lot of money so that I'll have a lot to give to support Christian causes. But, deep down, I knew that really it was I wanted to make a lot of money because I wanted to have money to spend. Now, the Bible certainly supports earning money justly, and I think in that I was correct. But this above approach that I've just explained does not get at the core of the issue. Jesus didn't say to the rich fool, to this Bible passage we just looked at, didn't say, the problem is that you earned this illegally or something. Doesn't get into whether it was legal or not, but still Jesus calls him through this parable a rich fool. There's something else going on. And then, how about the rich young man? Jesus makes no mention of how he got the money, invites him, calls him, come, sell all. So, it would appear that both of them earned it legitimately and legally. Yet, if we focus only on the proper way to earn money, we fail to recognize that mammon is a spiritual power, something that I think Jesus was getting at. Well, as I told you, I went to college, economics major, heading towards law school. Well, spring break of my freshman year, at a time when I didn't have a lot of money, I was home and trying to earn money. And I was painting a lawyer's office over that week. And, I gradually lost my zeal for making a lot of money. I think my thought of lawyers was, sort of the TV, I saw them, arguing in court, and that seemed pretty engaging. But when I was painting that office that week, what I saw them doing looked a lot like what I was doing at school, reading books, studying, and kind of edged away from the law school idea. And then, for no particular spiritual reasons, I began to realize there were other ways to measure a job than just how much it was paid. And although I certainly would have been content to make a lot of money, I began looking at jobs, thinking about professions in other ways, and headed towards studying to be a high school teacher. Then, just before my senior year, something significant happened. Right before school started, I went and visited a friend in Chicago, in a neighborhood called Uptown. And this was at that time, a poor part of the city, and he was working in a church there that was rooted in that neighborhood, seeking to be a witness in that neighborhood, helping the people alleviate poverty, things like that. And what I saw as I walked around was, poverty. And then, it was only just a half an hour from where I was going to college. But I remember sitting on the train, the Chicago Northwestern commuter train, heading back out to Wheaton, Illinois, and thinking, there's something wrong with this picture. Wheaton, a lot of Christians there living in comfort, in plenty, and just half an hour away, here were these others living in poverty. And I had the sense, this isn't right. Something needs to change. And I came to embrace something that seen on a Mennonite Central Committee poster of saying, live more simply so that others may simply live. And I embraced that, started doing a lot of thinking about it. What's it mean to live simply? So there I was, a college senior in suburban Illinois. I had almost no contact with poor people. I had very little money. I'm guessing, on my college dorm floor, I was probably the one with least resources there. But what was I doing? I was all focused on trying to live a simple lifestyle so I could help the poor. But, it was pretty theoretical, both because I had no contact with the poor, and as simple as I was living, I still didn't have much money. What was most pronounced in actuality about that period of life was not so much my action towards the poor, but my judgmentalism towards other Christians. Because I remember, going into people's homes and just looking around and seeing their possessions and thinking, oh, what kind of Christians are these? Look at all the stuff they have. They ought to be giving this, selling this so they could be helping the poor. And I became very focused on the amount of money one should spend. And then I judged other people by that. So, in one sense, radically different than I had been just a few years earlier when I was heading towards college. Now I'm focused on others, on giving. But my focus was still different than Jesus's. His concern went deeper than just teaching how much is appropriate, how much to keep, how much to give. Well, I graduated and moved to Honduras. After I graduated, August of that year, I was teaching in a bilingual high school, and things for me got both better and worse. Better in the sense that now I had direct contact with the poor, my immediate neighbors. People across the street, right behind my house, up the street. There were people in very significant need. So there now was an outlet for me to share with people in greater need. So in that sense, better. But also worse. You think if I was judgmental before, living in this college in suburban America, now I'm in this place of extreme poverty. These made the people look, in uptown Chicago, but they were living comfortably in comparison with my neighbors. So I became even more judgmental, more angry at rich Christians in the United States. I remember, reading my Bible at that time and jotting down verses, and I thought I'm going to accumulate all these verses to take back to my church in the United States to try to convince them of the importance of sharing their wealth to help the poor Hondurans. So again, significant progress since my pre-law days. Now I saw the need to help the poor, and I no longer felt that 10% was the cutoff figure for giving. Yet, I had become filled with self-righteousness and anger. And after a year or two, I realized that my life revolved around money just as much as any Wall Street investors, just as much as friends of mine from college who were now in law school. Although I gave more than half of my money away and had no savings account, money controlled me. Even though the cause was a good one, helping the poor, supporting my church, it left me enslaved. I was consumed by money. I remember in those years in Honduras, I remember saving money by, with teachers. Friday evening, we'd go downtown after the week at school and go to a movie. And I can remember sitting on the steps of the movie theater to save the $2 that they had spent to go into the movie theater. And I'd sit on the steps and grade papers. Or, not getting an ice cream queen and other people did, thinking, I'll give the money to the poor. Perhaps even more sad, I can remember, going to dinner, going out to dinner with students of mine who I'm seeking, I was a chaplain at this high school as well. And so I'd hang out with the youth, we'd do things together, we'd go for dinner. And I was very calculated. I'd think, okay, these kids, man, they are really rich. they have more money than I do. I'm not going to pay for their dinner. When I went out with poor people, of course, I buy dinner for them, but there's very calculating sense. So I want you to say there, I want you to feel how money was directing my every decision. It was enslaving me as surely as it had enslaved the rich fool. Money did not enslave Jesus. Although he encouraged using money to help the poor, he also freely let the woman pour out the perfume on his head. Jesus got more excited about a widow giving 2 coins because she gave all than she did about those who gave much more. But I was driven by the quantity of money. I wanted more money to help the poor. Although I would not have said it so plainly, I was a materialist. A materialist in the sense that I was trusting in money, this material thing, to give material things to people to solve their problems. I truly saw the depth of my problem when I moved back to the United States after my 4 years teaching in Honduras. Well, I was doing fundraising to help cover my salary working for InterVarsity Christian Fellowship. So I'd sent out pledges, I'd sent out letters to people asking for pledges to support me. And I remember receiving a pledge for support. And this was a pledge from a family couple who I'd gone to college with their son. He had been on my floor. I'd been his residence director. We'd been involved in camp together. So I knew him quite well. I didn't know his parents very well at all. But honestly, I'd sent the letter to them because they were pretty wealthy. Well, I opened the letter from them, and there was this pledge in there for a significant commitment. It felt wonderful. It felt great. I thought, wow, it felt so good what these people had done. And I found myself wishing, I wish I could do something like this. I wish that I could give money to support people like this because I wanted to give that sense. I felt they trust me, they affirm me. It was a great feeling. I wanted to do that. But there I was sitting there and thinking, but I don't have money. I can't do this. And then all of a sudden it struck me. There's other things that I could do. I don't have to use money to give to others for this feeling. Don't I have other things of value that I could give? Couldn't I write a note of encouragement or call up a friend? Again, in this moment, I realized how truly enslaved I was to this beast money. I saw it as this is the way of being able to do this, rather than thinking, oh, I could do this in other ways. I wanted money so that I could give. Again, radically different than my youth, but still very focused on money. Well, over the years, I've come to see that money is a power, and to see that this enslavement to money is the core issue. My previous attitudes towards wealth can train truth, but they lacked awareness of this fundamental truth. At first, I'd sought pleasure and comfort through money. Then I used my material lifestyle as a way to measure Christian character. What's people's lifestyle? Finally, I added to this a driving need to solve the problems of poverty through money. All of these missed the point. Money is a power that enslaves, not just an entity for use. As I began to not acknowledge that, I started to respond to money the way we saw Jesus respond. Jesus treated wealth as a spiritual problem. He did not just outline rules on how to earn, spend, and save money. Unless we address the fundamental spiritual issue, all our rules will just change the appearance of our enslavement. Jesus said, wealth is a power. You must decide if you will serve it or God or mammon. Christ desired to free people from something from which they could not free themselves. In word and deed, Jesus exposed the lies of money, setting people free. He told some people to sell all they had, and he sent his disciples out with no money. That created a showdown. If they followed Jesus, they took a step away from mammon's enslaving power. Free from wealth, they would have an opportunity to experience a life mammon would have them believe impossible. Jesus was concerned for the poor, but he asked people to give the poor for the sake of the giver as well as the receiver. Giving disarms the power of wealth. Mammon tells us to accumulate, to earn more, get bigger, better things, store up. Giving away goes totally against its logic. Open-handed, letting go. Interestingly, the more spontaneous the gift, the more it disarms the power. It's illogical. Don't do that, Mammon is telling us. Jesus recognized the widow as much freer than those who gave in a more controlled fashion. Yet, to be honest, selling all I have does not interest me. I've made some irrational gifts, and they brought a sense of freedom. But I would rather not do anything irrational right now with my retirement savings. You know, I can say, as others have, that Jesus did not command all to sell everything, only some people, that he had some rather wealthy followers. I can say things like that. It's true. But Jesus also said some very powerful things about money which I cannot ignore. Jesus leaves no middle ground. You can't serve God and mammon. Who do I serve? Is it impossible not to be at least partly sucked in by the lies of mammon? Is it impossible not to feel a sense of security from money in the bank or from insurance policies? Think of it this way. How about if I received, a bumper crop? Back to the rich fool parable. What if I received a bumper crop? How about my book, Religious No More? If all of a sudden, it made it on Oprah's list and she's telling everyone in the country to read the book. What if my royalties were so huge? What would I do? Would I, build new barns? Open up new bank accounts? What would I do with my bumper crop? I seem to have come down in a middle ground between two masters. Middle ground that Jesus says does not exist. If Jesus told me to sell my possessions, how would I respond? Thinking about it this way, it does seem impossible. Yet Jesus also said, with God it is possible. I think as long as I try on my own to do something about the problem of money, it will remain impossible. Doing will always, as my story shows, and I mean the length of my story, doing, whether it's doing to help the poor, doing to free me from mammon, doing will always lead to enslavement to mammon. It means treating money as a way to achieve something. Whether it's the rich fool seeking security, me in Honduras trying to help the poor, or me today trying to get freedom through giving it away. The focus remains on accomplishing something with money. If that is my focus, money will control me. And though I bestow all my goods to feed the poor, it profiteth me nothing. If, however, my actions with money come as a response to the greater reality of Christ, his love and his kingdom, then there can be freedom. Freedom rooted in God's grace, not in my doing. Consider Zacchaeus. Jesus invited himself to Zacchaeus' house. Zacchaeus responds by stating he's going to give half of his possessions to the poor. Why? Why is he doing that? I see three possibilities. One possibility is Zacchaeus might have said he was giving to the poor as a way to seek Jesus' approval. So I have a sense of, this guy likes the poor, I'll give to the poor, maybe Jesus will like me. Or second, perhaps he already felt Jesus' acceptance, but he recognized that his lifestyle did not match up to Jesus' teaching, so he tried to use his wealth to live up to the love he felt. Or maybe, lastly, perhaps he felt Jesus' love, and in light of this encounter, his whole perspective on life changed. Maybe it wasn't so much of him trying to achieve something, live up to, earn something. He could not earn Jesus' love, but he had received it. Receiving it, perhaps he was freed by it to give half of what he had. The powers that controlled his life before no longer had him in their grasp. The second and third possibilities are very close, yet the third is based on God's action, not on Zacchaeus's. The second response is like my giving in order to free myself of money. There's value in that. It does accomplish things. There's something in there. It has positive effect. But the third would be my giving because I recognize I already am free. Living in the kingdom provides the freedom to give. Giving in order to seek freedom has value. It's the best human thing we can do against mammon. It can put us in a place to see more clearly the truth about money and possessions. It's a good thing. I believe, however, the best thing I can do is recognize my inability to free myself, to ask God to do the impossible. When God allows me to experience His love and the reality of His kingdom, the lies of money melt away. And then, because of what I've experienced, I will give. Mammon would tell us that money is of ultimate importance and is the ultimate solution to any problems we might face. Mammon desires to function as an idol in our lives that shapes and informs the way we interpret and live our lives. Therefore, to place too much focus on money, even if for reasons motivated by Christian commitment, can leave us living life according to the norms and worldview established by mammon. Jesus' teaching, life, and death, His resurrection, provide a different way to understand reality and expose and disarm powers like mammon. Through Jesus, God invites us to place our trust elsewhere. Rooted in that reality, we can see the lies of mammon and we are freed to live differently. I give not to make money an object, rather because through Jesus, I see it is an object and I can give.